Okay, I'm going to start with a couple of disclaimers and a brief statement. One, I have a really bad cough. It's not Ebola and it's not contagious. And even though I may look like I'm dying, I'm going to be okay. The second thing is I'm a very needy person and I recognize that. So occasionally if you want to just nod your head or a little quiet amen, I can receive that. In fact, I'm hoping for it, okay? So, and then the third one, if I tend to only look on this side, is because the timekeeper's right there. Although I'm sure he's a very nice gentleman, you know, I'm going to have some issues with that. So I may, if I don't look at you, understand why, okay? Now my statement is that your future well-being, the future well-being of everyone in this room, does not hinge on your 401k, does not hinge on your TIAA-CREF, your savings, your socioeconomic status, what you've put away, the house you live in or where you live. Your future, our future well-being hinges on what we do with our children today. Okay? We're going to see them again. We're going to see them again. And how we see them, do we see them as threats? Do we see them as violators? Do we see them as healthy contributors to society? All of that hinges on what we do for them now. Not these other things that provide us with a, let's call it a sense of security, which I see it as a false sense of security. We have to keep that in mind. What are we doing with our children? What I do with my children hinges upon what happens to you as well. I remember Virginia Satir's book came out somewhere in the 60s. I was talking to two nice ladies earlier today, said that the family is the factory where people are made. Keep that in mind. That product is being created by us every single day. So just keep that in mind. Now, our objectives, my objective, and to do this within 20 minutes, is to talk about the types of development, which is the adolescent mental, what is adolescent mental health, and risk-taking behaviors. Okay, and I think Nancy's presentation makes it clear to me, and I enjoyed it very much because it says that even under the best of circumstances, right? Adolescence is a difficult period of life, right? Even when you've got it all together, even when you think you've got it all put together with your own children, adolescence is very difficult. So this morning, my kids are leaving for school and they just walk out. I'm like, why? Bye, see you later, and they have to raise their headphones and go, what'd you say? I said, forget it. So even under the best of circumstances, okay? We're going to first talk about physical development, and I'll skip some of these sort of theories behind it, but that's one element of physical development, and physical motor development allow children to explore the world and engage in their environment. In normative development, and I call that, I underline that for the reason is what to expect and the sequential milestones. And this is where they also develop language and mastery. But normative development is thought of very differently, right? We all have a definition of normative development that is rooted in how we develop and how we were cared for, right? So some of us have different ways of thinking of normative development, and we influence that in many ways. And so I worked on a study some years ago that showed that what poor parents in inner city communities wanted in the early years of school, preschool, kindergarten, maybe first grade, is to be sure that their children knew their address, their telephone number, right? Some names of someone who they could call, because a lot of these children walked with other children home, and this was essential. Whereas when we compared that to information of what parents wanted from their children in more well-to-do communities, is to know colors, to know shapes, right? to engage in that free kind of learning. So what we call normative is also driven by decisions. We also shape that in our children when we do things like when a little girl cries, right? We say, baby, what's wrong? Come here. I did that. Baby, what's wrong? Our little girl, right? When little boys cry, we're like, what? What's the problem? You know, why are you crying? We add all of these questions that we don't give the girls. So boys don't really have an experience early on in life to experience the full range of emotions, right? So they get caught up in these places where they don't know anything from 0 to 60, right? That's like when we're dating. If the girl reaches out for your hand, you know, that's her communicating, I feel good with you, I feel safe with you. The boy says, yeah, I got this, right? Because they don't understand the full range of emotion that later on leads to a lot of problems. Okay? So that's one form of development. Then we have Piaget's contribution to our theory of cognition is that how one comes to know. This is where the brain is now, you know, developing, and how we come to know, where abstract symbolic reasoning, thinking differently, starts to take shape, where development changes as a function of age and experience. So Piaget's own experience was that it's not that younger children were less smart than older children, they just knew less. You get it? The older children just happened to know more. So there was it was not about questioning that level of intellect, but understanding that development, cognitive development, happens in stages, just as I'll soon point out, and it's been pointed out before. We have social development. Albert Bandura gave us a sense of thinking, and we heard about that earlier. This is about the sense of control, self-efficacy, which is defined as possessing a sense of personal competence. I can do this, right? I'm able to do this, starting to possess those skills. That's when you start hearing from your children sometimes, I got it. You don't have to get it from me. I know how to do this, right? There's something developing in that child, which is a sense of confidence, and now being able to deal with difficult situations. You're all with me? Remember my nodding? Amen?
Yes.
Please? Thank you.
Amen.
Thank you. My goodness, tough audience. So then we have social. So we've gone through physical development, we've gone through cognitive development. We need to understand social development. And I won't go through all of these definitions. You also heard them before. But it's the understanding of how these things happen in stages. And when you impact those stages, right, with other things, with our own definitions of development, right, with our own ways of thinking, with the way that we begin gender bias very early on in children's development, we understand that some children can get caught up in these stages and have a very difficult time gaining the kind of identity, intimacy, all this basic trust. Because if I do that to my son and I go, come on, man up, right? His sense of trust in me will be reduced, because what does he do with those emotions? How about if he just felt scared or worried? How about if he just wanted to cry about something he didn't even understand, right? Just something emotional, right? So it's important that we understand that we can then influence that as well. So ego development is another form of development. And in ego development is where we develop the lenses to give order to and define the world around us. It shapes our behavior. It influences how we interact with others in a social environment. It gives us a sense of who we are, right? A sense of being able to enter into a social environment with confidence, and many times with lack of confidence, as that ego development continues to grow, right? So we learn ways and methods of being able to exist in that social environment, even when inside it's contradicted. For example, I hate public speaking, right? So isn't that a contradiction, right? Okay. So consider this for a second. You know, these intertwined, and I'm only mentioning a few, but they're the four important, but there are others out there that are sort of working together and individually at the same time and influencing each and one another, right? So this is what's going on, and these are the things that socially we're impacting. And I'll share a little bit more later about other things that impact that. But this is the process, okay? The impact of behavioral health, which is key to this, is understanding that behavioral health issues, mental health issues, the issues that we see now so prevalent, attention, finish it for me.
Deficit disorder.
Right. So attention deficit disorder, which me and my own experience in running mental health clinics in East New York and Bushwick, Brooklyn, showed me that it was not about attention deficit, it was about attention deprivation. You with me?
Yes.
So children were being presented at the clinic as, my son has already got attention deficit disorder, I know it. But what I witnessed in the waiting room was attention deprivation, right? So, but when there are other bona fide disorders that are attributed to the children, these disorders, right, can interfere, can interfere in one or any of these. So it becomes sort of like navigating through space when you see the Star Wars and you see the meteors going toward them and so forth. You're trying to navigate that, but eventually it will hit something, right? And that makes it all the more complicated because it undermines the normal process of development. It complicates it in such a way that what you're seeing is not just the disorder, but where the disorder impacted the child most, right? So sometimes we ask ourselves and we look at children and, can't you see what you're doing? Can't you see that that behavior is wrong, right? So we're then thinking and pointing at cognitive development, social development, when in fact it's how these things have infringed upon that development. You with me?
Yeah.
Okay, remember what I need. Oh, did that come out? Okay. Then there are the other determinants of all these things. So, for example, the type and quality of parental care. Key. Very important. It's been said that if a child has at least one individual who thinks they are the best, right, who admires them and cares for them, that will cover a multitude of sins. That it's not just about poverty, but what happens in that little room or what happens in those interactions really make a huge difference. However, oftentimes we're confronted with parents who don't know how to parent. These are skills that are very hard to develop. Most of the time, they're skills that are gained from someone else. So, I'm sorry. I told you that about the cough, so let's skip that part. So in these are skills. When my son was born, in my house, between my wife and I, we must have had 6, 7 college degrees. Do you think that helped me? Huh? Do you really believe that there were packages of everything that we got ripped open on the floor? What is this and what is that? And why is he crying? And me changing my voice to call the nursery in the middle of the night until someone said, you don't have to change your voice. We